Hey, how's it going, guys? All right, so I thought that this would be a good opportunity when I went and did the arrangement for the way that we play the Star Spangled Banner for graduation, that this would be a really good opportunity for you guitarists out there to look at what I did, which was very different than just playing the straight up chords. So I wanted to come up with something unique that would fit with the groove that we have there in the Star Spangled Banner arrangement. And so the first thing that I thought of was coming up with some sort of a picking deal so that it wasn't just like playing along with everybody else. So I came up with this idea where I was going to be like, all right, well, I want to do like a little picking thing where you're just playing specific pitches or specific strings that have to do with the chord itself. But the difficulty that I found immediately was that the two main chords, because the tune that the way we play it, it's in the key of G, is G and D, G and D, right? And so the G chord, it's interesting because it uses all the strings, and the D chord uses just the four highest strings, or at least the five highest strings anyway. And so that kind of makes it really different if you're focusing on the strings that you have fingers on. If you also play open strings, sometimes there's color tones in there that don't necessarily fit super well when they're being played by themselves. So I thought it made more sense to kind of do something where you could be playing like the same, at least the same strings or almost the same strings. But when I go to the D chord, it makes it all these open strings, which includes an E. And an E over a D chord, that's the ninth. And it's meant to be more of a color tone, so I don't know if it would necessarily work with this arrangement. So the idea that I came up with was, what if we figure out, or what if I figure out a way to play some alternate fingerings down here on the fretboard where there's some higher strings that we can focus on, but you wouldn't necessarily find these in like a chord book. And so I wanted to show you how I came up with what I came up with for the arrangement, so you can try it yourself, not only with these chords but with other times that you encounter this kind of situation. So quite literally, I got a tuner right here, which you may or may not be able to see from the camera over here. But I just use that tuner, first of all, besides tuning like we're supposed to, I use that tuner just to find the pitches that I needed to find over here, because I don't have the facility that a more experienced guitarist has as far as just like, oh, I know what this note is right here. So what I thought was, okay, first things first, let's find some pitches that work within those two chords that are really close to each other, where I can do like a fingering that's not like, being contorted and everything like that. So the first thing I was messing around with was just looking around on the highest string and using the tuner to tell me what notes they were. I used that as a guide. So in the G chord, the three main pitches on the G tetrachord, the G chord is G, B, and D. So right here I found a B on, what is that fret? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 7th fret on the highest string, on the high E string. So there's a pitch right there. And then I automatically was looking around in the same vicinity, so I'm not changing my hand position too much. So what about a chord tone nearby on the next highest string? So that's an F sharp. That doesn't really work, but that means the G is right next to it. So already I got the first and the third of the chord right there. And then let's go to the next string, D sharp. And here's a D in the 7th fret right here. So I already got all three pitches, with the D being the lowest note. And so the fingering I came up with that's the most comfortable, I messed around and I experimented with it. is like that. You can see it right there. Index and middle finger on the third and first strings, and then the ring finger on the second string on the 7th and 8th frets. Look at the camera shots to see where we have there. So those all work. So that's how I came up with the first one. So just like I did on the arrangement. And it also works as a mute. Again, I mentioned this in a previous video. Hopefully you were able to familiarize yourself with it and watch it. But it makes like this mute sound if I take the fingers off just a tiny, tiny bit. But you can almost kind of still hear them just a little bit. You can still kind of hear the pitches. So it ends up working really well. And of course you can use it as a strum as well, as long as you're making sure that you're strumming only those 3 strings. Okay, so the next chord, go to the next chord, a D chord. So I already have a D right here, but I'm just gonna kind of skip ahead because the other things that I came up with, see, that also works too, but it's a really weird hand position, and I just kind of felt like it wasn't the way to go. I mean, if you can make that work, then by all means go for it. But I think it makes a little bit more sense to move the position a little bit so it's it's a little more clear that there's a difference in chords there. So what I came up with was down here, there's an F pitch right there, so that doesn't really work. That means that there's an F sharp right there. But then I started experimenting with other things, and on the second string, in this fret right here, what is that? The 10th fret, I found an A, which is also in the D major chord, which I didn't mention that before. D, F sharp, A are the 3 main pitches in the D major chord. So I got an F sharp here, A here, C, C sharp, D. So there it is. So here's what I found is, now that kind of works too, because there's the first chord, but it's hard to use a finger on each string here because the frets get so much smaller the closer you get to the pickups. So when I was experimenting and getting the arrangement ready, I realized that what I could do is play a bar chord in the 10th fret on all 3 strings. That works. But it also gives you a bad note right here. It gives you an F natural instead of an F sharp. So you can play, what I realize is because these other 2 pitches I need, the D and the A, I play a bar on the 10th fret, and then I just put the middle finger on the 3rd string by itself. So it's the bar on these 3 strings, and because I'm putting that middle finger right there on the next fret, it's canceling out the bar there. It's just easier to play it that way as a bar because the fingers lay easier that way. See how that... You also want to experiment and see if the moving between the notes, there's like a natural way of getting your fingers to move between the 2 positions. Now, of course, it does take some getting used to, but it was really exciting for me to give myself this challenge to try to figure out a way to play those chords, but in a different place in the fretboard, to get a different sound, a different timbre, a different sonic vibration. All this stuff those are the benefits of trying out new things, and it also helps me to learn a little bit more about the guitar, and knowing that I could play a substitution of a G chord right here, a really a really colorful, thinner one. You know, not as full and rocking as the like that, but it's still, you know, it still gives me another option. It's another thing I can put in my toolbox as far as playing the instrument. So this is the kind of stuff that I'd really hope that you all would be interested in checking out and working on. So that's how I came up with it. Experiment with that and see what you can come up with. Use a tuner if you need to help you figure out where the notes are, and you know, just experiment and play around and see what else you can do. There's probably other combinations that would work on here too, but that's what I came up with for that particular arrangement. Okay, so check that out. Experiment on your own with some other things too, and let me know what you figure out. I'm excited to see how you learn and grow and discover new things. Cool. Thanks for joining me again, checking out this video. As always, let me know if you need any help with anything or if you have any questions, and I'm excited to hear from you. Peace. Take it easy.